Good morning. Welcome back to another Morning Java brought to you by our friends at the Get-Go Cafe and Market, where right now they're still open. They're doing curbside pickup. You order on the Giant Eagle app. You can go in, pull up, and they bring it out to your car. I've been doing that with milkshakes. Their milkshakes are great. Birthday cake is my favorite right now. But yeah, the big, I don't know if it's big news, but Crosby, he's missed, 2 days of camp now? He left the first scrimmage they had, and we haven't heard anything yet. And I think just the way that the NHL has been handling this is kind of goofy. I don't know what you think about how they're not allowed to tell us anything. And then people keep asking Sullivan on these Zoom calls, like, if there's any update on Crosby, and they're literally not allowed to tell us anything.
No, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. I think it's safe to assume that this isn't coronavirus related because he probably didn't receive a positive test result in the middle of practice the other day or in the middle of a scrimmage. From what I've heard from people inside the organization who presumably have a good sense of what's going on, it's not anything significant. It is something that doesn't feel right to Crosby. And I think at this point, at least, it seems like one of those out of an abundance of caution situations where you figure that if he has to take a few days off, he will still be ready physically and mentally for the game on August 1st. I think that unless his injury is far more significant than anyone, at least on the outside, seems to believe at this point, that they probably have bigger concerns than his physical status.
Yeah, I mean, watching that scrimmage, I saw him go down to the locker room, and it's not like he took a big hit or collided with anyone before that, and he did take the time to gather all of his sticks and walk down. So I think if he was dealing with something serious, he wouldn't have been taking his time going back to the locker room. And it just I think I get what the NHL was doing when they came up with this system for dealing with any kind of announcement with players being absent, because if it's the start of a practice and someone just doesn't show up, it could be coronavirus, it could be an injury, and in that case, I get them wanting to keep it secret. But if it's something like Crosby where we saw him leave in the middle of practice, it's probably not coronavirus. They couldn't even tell us day to day or week to week, because if with them saying nothing, it just leads to a lot more people speculating.
And yeah, I'm not sure why the league and the Players Association seem to be concerned about word getting out if a player has a coronavirus positive test result. If there's a stigma associated with that particular disease, I'm not aware of it. I don't know that there's any sort of scandal that would be associated with a player contracting that particular ailment. So I'm not sure why the league and the Players Association, which were in together on formulating this policy, why they decided that this was necessary. And we actually had an item in our Friday Insider a couple of weeks ago suggesting that precisely this sort of thing could happen with rampant speculation because you're not providing information on pretty basic health issues. I really don't see what's in it for the league, but a lot of things that the league does baffle me, so I guess this is no exception.
Yeah, I did see some, I guess, stigma on social. It was when it came out a Canadiens player tested positive. I saw people replying on social oh, I thought hockey players would be smarter about this. So I think there could be the perception that if a player catches coronavirus, he did something wrong, where it was, that's not necessarily the case. They could catch it anywhere. It could be someone in their family going to the grocery store and they get it from them. So I get that if someone did come down with coronavirus, they might want to protect them in that way, so people don't blame the player for getting sick. But then just what it's turned into. A guy could break his leg at center ice in front of us. We could all see it, and all they would tell us is that he's unfit to play. So It's a little goofy, a little misguided, but like you said, that's a lot of what the NHL is.
Well, wish you could say this is an exception to the way things are conducted by the league, but it really kind of falls in line with a lot of what it does.
All right, Dave, as of Monday, the Penguins have had 2 scrimmages now. And I mean, with not a whole lot going on in sports, people are reading into the goaltender's performance. And I know that first one, Matt Murray did not have a good day. 7 goals, I think like 4 of them came in quick succession. And then, I mean, I watched him, he went out on the ice after that scrimmage and to work on shootouts with Marlowe and McCann. And it's like, he was not stopping any of them. I mean, he let in, I know it's like the first 4 and a good number of the ones after that. He was just having a really rough day. And both goaltenders then on Monday had a pretty good performance. And then I just, how much can you take away from this when deciding who the game 1 starter is going to be? Given their body of work from the regular season, how much would a bad performance in a scrimmage like this affect that decision, do you think?
I don't think it will carry a whole lot of weight, particularly when it was the first scrimmage. I think the game 1 starter's job is Matt Murray's to lose, and he would have to do an awful lot wrong in the next couple of weeks to lose it. I think what you're playing, or what he and Tristan Jarry are playing for now, is the length of the leash that Murray will be on. Because Tristan Jarry had such a strong season, I think he has to be considered more of a candidate to replace Murray if Murray would struggle against the Canadiens than, say, Casey DeSmith would if he were in the backup role. But Matt Murray very clearly has Mike Sullivan's confidence, has since their days together in Wilkes-Barre, and I think it will take an awful lot going wrong for Murray for Sullivan to consider making a change.
Yeah, and I mean, Jarry's been having a very, very good camp. He's been sharp. I mean, that first scrimmage, it was like, I don't think there was ever a moment where I thought he was in danger of letting in any of those shots. And I think, I don't know what the leash should be. Like you said, he would have to look pretty bad once we get to game 1. And I know a lot of people read into, it's like that first scrimmage, Murray was on the team of like the bottom 6 guys, and he was playing against Crosby and Malkin. I know a lot of people took that as like a give, that like, okay, it's locked in, he's set. But then they did switch that in Monday's scrimmage. They switched goalies. Jarry was the one facing Crosby and Malkin, and Jarry did say that they haven't been told anything about their roles yet, but I mean, they wouldn't anyway this point in camp. And both of them have spoken during camp now about how they get pushed by the other, and it's because both of them are capable of being starters. So, all right, so the Penguins got good news on Monday that the 9 players initially held out from training camp due to what they called possible secondary exposure to someone with coronavirus. It was just an abundance of caution. I think they were holding those guys out. They were cleared to return to camp. So they didn't play in that first scrimmage. They skated on their own with DeSmith and Larmy on the second rink. But I mean, the most notable of those guys, really, one of the only notable ones is Hornquist, who, I mean, probably has a spot in this lineup. But in his absence, that kind of spot on the third line has been filled with Lafferty and Rodriguez, who both of them have been having a very good camp. I mean, that first scrimmage, Lafferty would have been my number 1 star or number 2 star, and then after Crosby went down, I mean, Lafferty got moved up to first line center, and then Rodriguez was first line center in that second game. So what have you seen from those 2 guys, or how have they surprised you?
I think they've both made a push for some playing time in the Montreal series. I don't know that if the Penguins are able to stay healthy up front, and assuming that Crosby is back, that either of them will be in the lineup for game 1. I do think Hornqvist will be. It's he. It would be very difficult to justify keeping him out of a high stakes game, and I don't think it's like he has gotten terribly out of shape during his time of abundant caution. So he'll be there. And if nothing else, Mike Sullivan has to be feeling pretty good about having guys like Lafferty and Rodriguez at his disposal. If somebody, with the Penguins this year, you can probably assume that somebody's going to get hurt. Probably multiple somebodies are going to get hurt. And so having capable replacements to plug in is obviously going to be important. And, in addition to having a lot of capable bodies, the Penguins have a lot of versatile bodies. Lafferty and Rodriguez are two prime examples who play on the wing, but can also be plugged in at center and do a pretty fair job, as Lafferty did when he took over for Crosby on Saturday and Rodriguez on Monday. Again, you don't want to read too much into training camp scrimmages, but when guys perform as well as those two did against some pretty fair competition, at the very least, it makes you want to pay attention to how they do over the rest of camp, and regard them as serious candidates for some playing time.
Yeah, I mean, before Crosby went down, they were on the team that the forwards were the bottom six guys, so they're going up against Crosby, Malkin, and a lot of the key guys, and they were having great games. Both of them had a couple of breakaways. They had scoring chances where, but Lafferty had a goal in that first one, Rodriguez in the second. They had a lot more chances where, they could have scored. And like you said, the versatility, like Sullivan pointed to that after the first scrimmage where, not only do they have a deep lineup, but they have a lot of versatile guys like that who can step in, play multiple positions. Rodriguez center in both wings, Lafferty center and wing, like you said. So if someone goes down, or I guess you'd say when someone goes down with this team, those guys would be the first to step in, and they would not be in a bad position. With those two coming to the lineup, and I think Lafferty especially, we saw, it's hard to judge off of these scrimmages, but I guess flashes of what he looked like when he first joined this team when he got called up, especially with the speed he was playing with in that first scrimmage. That was like one of the biggest things I noticed in that scrimmage, just how he was flying everywhere, and that's he got himself a few breakaway chances just because of that. But those two, they've got to be the two biggest surprises of camp, right? Would you say?
Yeah, to this point, there's still a lot of camp left. We don't want to be passing final judgments on those guys or anybody else, good or bad, at this point. But Lafferty, I agree with you that he looked much more like he did at the start of the season than he did as the season moved along. He certainly opened some eyes during camp and in the early weeks of the regular season, much as he did to grab attention in the early days of this camp. And if he can continue to perform at that level, he'll make himself an integral part of this team, and he won't have to worry about renting in Wilkes-Barre anymore.
Yeah.